So this next segment is one that a lot of women are going to relate to, and it is timely as the nation deals with reproductive rights. The Big Freeze, a reporter's personal journey into the world of egg freezing and the quest to control our fertility, is a fascinating look into the fast-growing industry of egg freezing. For journalist and now author Natalie Lampert, this is a very personal project, and it's one that many women are going to benefit from, and I'm so glad you joined me now to talk about this.
Thank you for having me.
This is a really vulnerable thing you talked about and shared, and so I'm really glad that you are sharing it. Can you tell me how the book got started?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the book is about my personal investigation into this crazy world of egg freezing, an industry that is lucrative, not very regulated, fast growing.
Wow.
And it's about my quest to figure out the best way to figure out the best way to preserve my own fertility.
Right, because you had a surgery, right, when you were very young that took one of your...
Exactly. So when I was 12, I had an emergency surgery that removed my right ovary and fallopian tube. Oh, wow. And 8 years later, for unrelated reasons, I almost lost my remaining ovary, and doctors urged me to freeze my eggs. So I had a very personal reason for diving into this. And then professionally, a few years after that second surgery, I was in New York City for graduate school, and I started seeing ads on the subway for egg freezing cocktail parties. And I thought, okay, I'll go to that, maybe find something to report on and learn more about egg freezing, this thing that doctors told me to do. And that became the next several years of my life.
Wow, and so you dedicated your time to this. And you make a point in the book, which I think is really fascinating. It really resonates for me, that egg freezing is largely a way for women to, quote, buy time. Tell me about the psychological effects for women about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of both sides of this. You know, egg freezing in many ways is about assurance. It's not an insurance policy.
Oh, okay.
One of the most striking psychological effects of egg freezing is that women who freeze their eggs feel a powerful sense of relief, less dating pressure, more career focus, a break from the constant tick-tock of their ovaries, which is really powerful. And the research shows that for many women, even if they never use those frozen eggs, they think that the high price tag and the intense side effects are worth it for the peace of mind that it brings.
Okay, that makes sense. You know, I think of Marissa Tomei and her biological clock ticking.
Yeah.
Because it's true, it is in the back of our minds. And I think now that would have maybe eased things up a bit for me in my career.
Yep.
Because we feel like we have to make a choice one way or the other. And I do like that gives us some options. The thing that your book really shows us is the realities of egg freezing that no one talks about. You know, you mentioned, not always a guarantee.
Right, yeah. You know, egg freezing is aggressively marketed as a sure thing, but the success rates vary. And yeah, it's a big deal that we don't talk about that enough. Yeah, that's a big thing.
That is a big thing. And and I think that's part of it. Like, it's okay to be like, all right, this isn't a sure thing.
Right, and we think that it is. And in the past decade, we've seen a huge increase in the number of women freezing their eggs, but very few of those women, more than 90%, haven't returned to use them. So egg freezing is a great technology, but the fact is we still have a lot of questions about how reliable it is and if it will work for everybody.
I love the whole theory of assurance versus insurance. That's one thing I think it's really good to educate people on. But the second, what are some other things that need to change as we educate ourselves about reproductive health?
So as I researched and reported this book, I learned that you can't talk about egg freezing without talking about so much more.
Right.
Birth control and hormones, sex ed and how women come to learn or not learn about their bodies, ethical issues with regard to fertility technologies, money, marketing, so much. There's so much we don't learn, and women often don't know what questions to ask, and I think that's a really big problem.
Yeah, we don't even know. And I feel like you're right. That's not something that's talked about enough when it comes to reproductive health. A lot of people don't realize that some of these laws that are taking root in certain states across the nation, Texas specifically, I think you've all heard a lot about that. There's technological advances in reproduction that deal with some of the issues that are becoming political issues. How, with the current political climate, that means access to those advancements are now in jeopardy. Some people are not allowed to handle that because of the way the laws are written. What are your concerns?
Yeah, well, when Roe versus Wade fell, experts predicted that fertility technologies like IVF would be next. And an essential part of IVF and egg freezing is freezing eggs, freezing embryos. So when we start restricting that, that opens the door to a whole host of other problems impacting access to using your embryos, what we do with them, etc. So that's the concern. And to be honest, I think that the outcome of this upcoming election will determine if the reproductive rights climate continues to improve or continues to degrade.
You got that right. So here's the deal, folks. Basically, what they didn't understand is that the question is about when is life created, and that is why the IVF issue is such a problem, and that is why IVF clinics in many of these states are closing. We spoke with Dr. Laura Shaheen about this when this all started, and she's in your book as well. Local fertility doctor extraordinaire. She's an incredible person, and she speaks about this too. Correct?
Yep. Fertility doctors across the country are very, very concerned, and they really didn't see it coming. And again, we're talking about these are families and people who want to build their families and have more children, and the thought that that would be taken away is awful.
It's a crazy time. I'm really grateful that you took the time to read this, to educate us about our biological health, to understand more about reproductive rights, to understand more about what it means to freeze your eggs and have hope for the future. So thank you so much, Natalie. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
And you can talk to Natalie tonight. She will be at Elliott Bay Book Company Thursday, August 22nd. It'll be a fascinating and very important discussion. So go check it out.